So we're still in segment 1, but I thought a logical break in terms of the helmet sequence would be those that were produced during World War I. Okay, the war is over. Who won? Oh, yes, okay. I guess we know who won. And we come to the 1920s. And according to the Versailles Treaty, the winners get to do certain things and the losers get to do certain things. And so during the 1920s, Germany is allowed to have a very small forces, just as in the First World War, where they had an army and a navy and an air force. They had small contingents. But because of the fact that there was so much destruction during World War I, because of the fact that the industry was in a shambles, there was very little access to producing new goods. And so what do you do in a case like that? You use what you have. So during the Reichswehr period, during the 1920s and leading up to the Third Reich, 1933, they utilized a series of helmets from what was left behind. So here you have a model 1918 helmet, but it has something on it that we didn't see on any of the World War I helmets. It has a shield, a painted shield. During World War I, of course, going back for centuries, there were states in Prussia and in Germany. And those states had their individual flags and their individual regalia. And that was certainly true after World War I, where they had their home guard and they had their small army. And so when you drew up a group, a regiment, a unit from a region in order to retain their regional flair, they would be inclined to use a shield that would be from that particular region. And I believe this one with that setup happens to be Thuringen. And these were usually hand-painted. You very seldom see an actual decal that we'll talk about later on. And you find a number of these around. And this is where you really have to look very carefully because you have to determine if, in fact, the shield is original to the period or has been applied later on, perhaps by a collector to goose up the value. But here is an original example of a model 1918 with all of the internal components, including that chin strap that I made reference to. I'm glad that I picked this one up and used it, because this will show you what the new chin strap from 1918 looked like. So I'm going to pass that around and give you an opportunity to take a look at that. Now that you've all got your exercise from holding the one with the frontal plate, huh? Yeah. So, but because so much was destroyed, because so much was damaged and not usable after World War I, because there were other things that steel was being used for, many helmets got melted, were actually thrown into pots, were melted down to their basic components and used for other things. In addition to that, the old "to the victor goes the spoils." Of course, many German helmets after World War I came home. That's to the United States. So there was a limited number of helmets that they could use that were around. So there was a need, as they used up what they had, to produce other helmets. They needed them. This was peacetime. This was a time when the steel helmet was now certainly the helmet used by the soldier and used as a piece of protective headgear. But because of the need to have an additional supply of helmets, the word went out, the contracts went out, and there was limited production of what's referred to as the model 1918 type. And that's a colloquialism. That's a collector term for sure. but it's the model 1918 type. So it's a helmet that has the coal bucket shape. It's the helmet that looks like the World War I helmet, but it was produced during the 20s or the 30s. And so here you have an example of what I believe to be one of those helmets. It is a little bit lighter, and they run, you could spend a whole seminar on transitional helmets, 1918 type helmets. But here I've got one or two examples to show you. And the brim changed. Some of these refer to as duckbills. If you take a look at them, they're very interesting. Some of them are higher, some of them are lower. And that's because there was no regulation. These were made by private contractors. They were made in small numbers. There was no regulation per se that dictated what they had to be. And so, and also colors. And here you see one that is in more of a blue-gray. And you have very similar to a model 1916 setup with the leather. They were using what they had. That's essentially what I'm getting at. They were using what they had. And someplace along the way, I'm going to make reference to manufacturers, because I've told you that there were approximately 25 manufacturers in the First World War, and then 5 main manufacturers of helmets during World War II. And in most cases, in fact, in all cases, there was some way that they identified who made that helmet. And that's a marking or a code that they would have on the helmet. And sometime in the course of the seminar, rather than belaboring it or bogging us down with every helmet pointing it out, one of the things you can take home with you today is that, all helmets have a code, the manufacturer's code, and they'll have a size stamp. Now, will you always see that? The answer is no. The answer is no. And that's because in the course of production, sometimes the stamp is not definitive, sometimes it's angular, sometimes it's not sharp, the die is wearing out, so on and so forth. Sometimes it has 2 or 3 coats of paint on it because it's been reissued. We're going to talk about that. So that occasionally is a dilemma for a collector. They can't find the code. They can't find the size, the stamp. Because in the shell of the helmet, not only will it be the maker's code, but there will also be the shell size. Okay? And we'll talk about that.